Thank you, Coach, for your time. I did want to start with a question that wasn't related to the upcoming season. Just going back to belated congratulations on your Hall of Fame induction in the fall. And can you just talk about the uniqueness of that with Syracuse lacrosse, where in its entire history, just 4 coaches, all are in the Hall of Fame. And I can't really even think of another program nationally in any sport where that may be the case when you go back over, 100 years in a program. Just talk about the uniqueness of that and then how it relates to your moving forward as recruiting where players know they're going to play for a Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah, well, it's obviously an honor and always been very special to be part of Syracuse lacrosse. I played here and then coached with Coach Simmons Jr., another Hall of Famer, and had the chance to get to know Roy Simmons Sr., which was quite a treat to get to know him. And, being a football coach, boxing coach, and head men's lacrosse coach. So he had some great stories. So just to be part of the program, and like you said, to be one of the 4 coaches is, I think it's a pretty special thing for me and my family. And then to be inducted into the Hall of Fame is just icing on the cake. So I'm still having a lot of fun and looking forward to the season. And knock on wood, we'd like to keep this thing going. So it's great that these players have a chance to kind of pick up where they left off last year.
Thanks, Brad. Next, we're going to go to Lindsey Kramer from the Post-Standard.
Hey, Coach. Good to see you. I hope you and your family have all been safe and well. Good to get back to lacrosse. Just want to check in. A couple weeks ago, Stephen Rafus was in the transfer portal, and now he's back with the team, and now he's the captain. Can you take us through, what happened there, how it resolved, and any other players involved in anything like that?
Well, he was elected captain in the fall, and then obviously with the COVID, everything got delayed. So it's good to have him back. Yeah, he was. There were some things happened here at the university, and he was waiting to see how that was going to all play out. So he did go into the portal just so he had another option. And out of fairness to him and his family, I think that's probably all I'll say about it right now.
And then just a quick follow, is there anybody, as a result of that situation, if it involved other players, is there anybody that's going to be missing any games as a punitive measure, to start the season?
No, we've got everybody back and everything's been resolved, for lack of a better word. And we're good to go. Everybody's going to be here.
Okay. Well, good to see you again. Thank you.
You too. Nice background there. I like that.
Snow.
Next, we go to Brad Klein.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for taking the time. Classic preseason question. Which newcomers are you impressed with, especially considering the circumstances, what they're dealing with in their freshman year?
Yeah, it's, with pretty much the whole team back from last year's team, it's, we have some good freshmen, although it's going to be probably tough for them to break into the lineup because we've got an extra class basically. And whether, 5 or 6 of our guys that were starters or had a serious playing time last year are back. But, Owen Helps comes to mind, at the attack end of the field. He's played a lot of Canadian box, and I think he's going to have a bright future here at Syracuse. Liam Ferris is another one. He's playing attack in midfield and doing a very nice job there. Jack Savage in the face-off, just to go to a different position. Let's see here. Marshall McGuire's doing a pretty good job. Kalen Lewis in the midfield. Defensively, that whole group's coming back, so it's going to be again tough with the freshmen to get in there. A couple of younger guys, Clary, Landon Clary, Michael Page, doing a really good job. They're freshmen, but they've had a year under their belt. They redshirted. So those are the names. That Patrick Duffy in the goal. So those are some of the, freshmen that I think you're going to see some in the future. Harrison Thompson is technically a redshirt freshman, but he's played extremely well.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Brad. Next we go to Mario Song.
I think that was me, Tyler. You cut out a minute. Coach, good to see you. Good to see you again. You talked about all these guys that you have coming back and, you know, the season, the start that you had last year. How do these guys maintain that edge knowing that, you know, they played so well last year, but this year is a completely different year? What was the beginning fall like and practice here early on for you now?
Well, I think the fall, you're doing some bonding. You know, you had to be careful with the COVID issues, but I think the guys were just excited to get back and get on the field again, especially after we left the field last March. So I think they're pretty happy to be out there. Everybody's being, pretty careful. So I think we're just excited to get going again. And you're right, that's the key with the chemistry once again, and adding some newcomers into the mix. And we'll see. Where I'm a little bit concerned is we're probably a couple weeks of practice behind a lot of the teams that we're going to play. So, and this being only the second day, so to get that edge back and to keep that chemistry, time will tell. But I think that the spirits are high right now, and we just know going against teams like West Point, very well coached team, and they have a couple weeks ahead of us here, and then Virginia, the same thing, another very talented team, especially they get Doc Aiken back from a year or so ago. So they're going to be a special group with a couple more weeks of practice. And, I pay a lot of attention to basketball. It seems when they were out, for them to get their edge back, conditioning wise, shooting wise, playing as a group, I'm just hoping we can do well early in the season here with being behind a couple of teams that we'll be going against practice wise.
Do you adjust your practices differently because of COVID? You see, it's not basketball where you have 5 guys and, you're on the court. Lacrosse is completely different. How do you judge?
Well, that's a great question. It's we've had to totally change our practice schedule from previous years because we normally would have about 5 weeks, and now we've got 3 weeks before our first game. So I think in the past a little bit, we can do individual things and fundamentals and kind of, build our way up, where we've pretty much kind of hit the ground running as far as getting into the big picture stuff very early. It's only second day of practice, but we have to, it's kind of tricky because we'll do things, we won't be in Ensley on Friday and Saturday, we'll be in the Dome, and that's set up for basketball so that we're not going to have a full field. We'll have a half court, so to speak. So we've had to adjust our schedule to doing those half field situations for Friday and Saturday, as opposed to, being a full field scrimmage or clears and rides, that you need that 110 yards to go on. So we're adjusting that, as a staff. And, I've been here a while, seen it all before. There were many years where we didn't have 110 yards in that wonderful Ensley Center. So, and I remember we've been here years where we had to literally plow off the parking lot and get outside. So we're certainly enjoying our facilities that our alum have created for us.
Look forward to seeing you guys in a couple of weeks. Thanks, Coach.
Great. You're welcome.
Thanks, Mario. Next we go to Patrick Gunn.
Hey, Coach. So obviously there's a bit of a delay to the start of the practicing, but you also have one of your most talented rosters that you've had in a couple of years coming back. So what are you looking for from the team in practice and in the early games this season?
Well, you're right. I'm hoping that's going to make up the difference for the lack of practice. But it's a really good group for leadership also. So we've asked especially our upperclassmen to step up and help us coach on the field. If we're doing, rides and clears and we're trying to watch everything, I think communication is very important. So by, the guys that are on the field or even off the field, if they're telling other players where they should be and when to get there, that's helping us coach. And they also learn from doing that, right? So that if they're paying attention to, who's on the field, maybe got a freshman on the field or somebody that hasn't had a lot of experience in a clearing or riding situation. If they're helping them talk their way through it, that means they're seeing the big picture. They understand. They're being leaders and they're helping us coach. and they learn from that. So that's been very encouraging.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Roshan Fernanda.
Hi, Coach. It's nice to meet you. So I had a couple questions about Peter Dearth. So obviously he committed to Syracuse as an offensive midfielder, but you guys shifted him to the short stick. What was that transition kind of like? I know that was 3 years ago, but how do you feel like that transition kind of happened? And how do you feel like he's settled in the years since?
Well, it's a pretty good question, because there's a lot of guys that, come here. We're obviously a deep group. And if you came out of high school as an offensive player, and Peter was used both ways, but you come out as an offensive player and you start playing offense here at Syracuse, it's not always an easy buy-in to go from the offensive end of the field and go to the defensive end. And, I think that's one of the reasons that Peter is a captain, is that, he's done what's best for the team, on and off the field. So the fact that he would buy into that defensive position so quickly, and it was a big need for our group. And if you look at some of the other guys with Dami and Avilas, they were offensive players in high school. They're very good athletes, and they've bought into the system. And they're probably playing a lot more on the field. They're in game situations on the defensive end of the field than they would have at the offensive end, especially where our depth is. So for these guys to like Peter to buy in and do that and make our defense stronger, which is better for our team, my hat's off to them for doing that.
Yeah, and just as a quick follow-up to that, obviously as a more defensive player, his value doesn't show as much in the stats, I'll say, but he still makes those same, momentum shifting plays. I guess what would you say about that?
Well, I think it's a double threat, so to speak, right? So him being comfortable at the offensive end of the field, and guys like Dami and Avilas, when they do get it, we clear the ball. If they come up with it at the defensive end of the field and they're going to the offensive end, they're comfortable going to, they're comfortable playing off, and now you're a double threat. You can't just say, okay, like a lot of shorties, they might clear the ball and they run off the field as quick as they can. These guys staying on and now being covered by an offensive player that got back on defense. It's a double-edged sword. So we have a threat going from defense to offense, and we're forcing the other team's offensive players to play defense, and many of them don't play it very well.
We got 4 more questions, so we should make it through. We'll start with Nate May.
Hey, John, I'm going to cheat a little bit and ask you a quasi schedule question. Can you just take us a little bit behind the rationale to do away with the ACC tournament this year?
Well, there's a lot of things that go into that, right? There were 5 teams in the ACC, so it's pretty complicated to start to have the tournament. Do you leave one out? Do you have a play-in game? Especially for teams like Syracuse and Notre Dame, where it's such a distance to travel. It's very expensive, and when you look at budgets, especially for the two of us, if we have to travel there, and obviously the other way around, but Duke and Carolina and Virginia, Duke and Carolina, you can almost see the campuses for one another, so that their costs are less, and then to try to get other quality games, especially when we're the unknown with COVID, where we weren't sure how our schedule was going to work out. So by at least adding 2 more regular season games in the ACC gave all of us at least 6 games, because we weren't sure, with the Big Ten going into playing themselves twice, and they're not, I don't think they're playing out of conference in the Big Ten. It was going to be important for us to have other teams on our schedule. So there are a number of reasons went into it. We thought we'd at least guarantee everybody, instead of 1 or 2 teams being left out and not having, an extra game or 2. We were kind of guaranteeing ourselves.
With all 5 in the preseason top 8, could that cost an ACC team a bid, not having that automatic berth at the end of the year?
Well, there's some unknown there too with the NCAA selection committee. So, in the past we've had the RPI, and I guess we could have the RPI again this year. So by having that many teams in the top, then and playing each other, then getting another 2 games in the ACC, it's only going to strengthen our argument. And then if we win games outside our conference, that's going to help us also. So who knows, right? But at the end of the year, if there were 5 teams from the ACC in the tournament, I wouldn't be surprised.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nate. Next, go to Andrew Crane.
Hey, Coach. Hope everything's going well. A lot of your guys have obviously gotten the preseason accolades from whether it's Inside the Cross or USILA, but one in particular is Brendan Curry. And I'm curious, from when he first got here to where he is now, like what are some of the areas that he's improved at most, and like what are some of the things that you or Pat have worked with him on, the past year or so to really help him click on that line with Tucker and Jamie?
Yeah, well, I think probably the biggest jump for him would be, say, his freshman year to his sophomore year. I think he's leveled out and doesn't have to work on a ton of things from last year to this year. You can always improve your shooting, your decision-making process. And for him, he's such a reactive player. He's got that great first step and then the speed to go along with it. And so I think over time, especially early on, would be really just an understanding of the offense and his shooting. And it's I'd say probably from high school to now, it's his shooting that has probably improved the most. His dodging has been there right along, obviously playing as a freshman. We saw some good things in him.
Thanks, Andrew. Next, go to Brad Klein.
Hey, Coach. Sorry, I just want to loop back to how the pandemic might have affected your team. Obviously, with plenty of Canadians on the roster, was there any difficulty getting anyone across the border and into your facilities?
No, I know that I know they both stayed in the States for a while, with friends. And I think that was, part of the reason, because they were worried if they went back, then, trying to get back here or not being able to get over. So, and I'm pretty sure Owen was home before he came back for this spring. So apparently things had loosened up and he was allowed to come back. I know that all our players had to show negative tests before they were allowed back on campus.
Thanks, Brad. I think I cut Andrew off before his follow-up, so we'll go to that one, and then we'll go to Noah for the last question.
Thanks. I wanted to follow up on what Mario had kind of alluded to earlier with kind of changing the practices around and having to adjust a lot this season because of all the COVID protocols. I was just curious if there's any like kind of weird things that you never would have imagined having to follow like in any other season, as far as like, I don't know, any road trip protocols you have to follow, or like do guys have to like split off into different film room kind of arrangements? I guess, are there any other weird protocols that you guys gonna have to follow this season to make sure everything can keep going smoothly?
Hold on, something's going on with my pick. Can you guys see me?
Yeah, we're good.
I'm sorry. Would you help me out with your question again? You said is it what's different now? I would think probably the biggest things would be, we've spent a lot of time in the film room in the past, and going over situations, as a group and for individuals to learn from. And now it's been more of a, we're doing everything like via Zoom. And so even for responsibilities, more so with the assistant coaches, as far as cutting up some film and getting it to the guys either through Zoom or Huddle, and the players accessing it on their own. So I'd say there's a lot more of that, virtual learning going on than in the past. That's probably the biggest thing. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Last question, we'll go to Noah.
Hey, Coach. Normally at this point in the season, you'd have a couple schools that would have came for scrimmages. I know Vermont came at the end of January, and a couple other schools this year not really having the opportunity to do that. You know, what do you lose there? The fact that your guys won't see competition, you know, somebody across the field, an opponent, until the first game of the season.
Well, yeah, you know, it's a combination there, right? It compounds itself because, you know, with a couple of weeks less practice than everybody else, and then no practice games, you know, via scrimmaging, you know, we're hitting the ground running against some really good teams, and that's, you know, we're doing everything we can as far as scheduling practice and having the guys learn, you know, their do's and don'ts from film. You know, that's we try to compensate for it as best we can.
Quick follow-up, if I can. Is there any way that specifically you're trying to build in that, you know, more game-like competition more this season than you would in past seasons because you lose that time?
Yeah, well, we'll be, you know, probably this is our second day of practice, so we'll be getting into game situations ourselves. You know, we'll be putting up the scoreboard, we'll be putting up the shot clock, we'll be scrimmaging one another, you know, amongst ourselves. We'll be, you know, loading up. You know, if we split into two groups, two teams, so to speak, you know, we'll be loading up our starters on one group, and then the other group, you know, less experienced players, so that we'll be doing game situations. Then sometimes we'll mix it up and we'll do, you know, we'll try to make the teams more even. You know, so X amount of players on one team, X amount on the other team, and go against each other to try to make it more competitive. You know, hopefully, if all the starters were on one group, they'd do better than the other group. But so we'll split it up to get that competition. So when we look up the scoreboard, it's even. And now, you know, at the end of our scrimmage game, you know, they'll be looking up at the clock and say it's a 1-goal game, and we're either behind and we have to catch up, or we're ahead and, you know, let's use some clock here. You know, all those types of game situations.